At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. I mean, in the end, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. My name is the VoiceOgre, and let's begin.
Professor Mordo's low, guttural rumble vibrated through the stone amphitheater. In Ulgar, the species resembled a bear that had stood up, gotten a job, and now stared down a failed pension. Scars cut paths around the thick fur on his face, and he walked with a permanent limp, favoring his left leg. On the main holo display, a three-dimensional human soldier flickered. The soldier wore worn, ablative plate armor, a pulse rifle held at a low ready. Dust and sweat caked their face as they stared at an enemy beyond the projector's limits.
Anti-hominid Tactics 101,
Mordo growled, pacing before the image.
the most frustrating addition to this collegium's curriculum in 3 centuries.
He jabbed a heavy, clawed hand at the figure.
The human variable, a species new to the galactic stage. Allied species junior members, yet their combat record defies every predictive model that we have. They wrest victories from hopeless scenarios and defeats from assured ones. They are an anomaly, invalidating our calculations.
Cadets leaned in, whispering to their neighbors. They were their generation's best, scions of military dynasties and tactical prodigies from a dozen worlds. Derek's Tharn, a Hectian whose dense-boned frame possessed its own gravity, sat between his fraternity brothers from the Basalt Aegis. Nearby, Axiom Ascendancy's Princess Aelia tilted her smooth, ovoid head, and her internal gyro's soft hum shift pitch as she concentrated. And in the back row, as inconspicuous as a supernova in a library, sat Carson Moreno, the human.
So,
Mordo said, lowering his voice. He scanned the room. His new cadets shifted under his stare.
let's begin with the fundamental question. The one vexing Allied High Command for 2 decades.
He jabbed a claw at a hologram.
How do you kill humans?
Dozens of cadets shot their hands into the air. Mordo pointed a claw at a slick-skinned Sylian cadet in the front row, whose amphibious nature showed in their scaled slight sheen, like oil on water.
Overwhelming firepower, Professor. Saturation bombardment of identified strongholds.
Inefficient.
Mordo grunted.
The siege of Veston's Trench. The Sylian fleet glassed 3 continents. The human resistance, operating from subterranean bunkers they dug with mining equipment, used the planet's unstable magnetic field to disrupt your weapon locks and picked off your landing craft for 6 months. Your fleet withdrew.
He pointed to another cadet, a willowy mycelium, their crown of sensory filaments quivering.
Use misinformation to turn their leaders against each other.
Also inefficient. Operation Silent Whisper. The Cerulean Intelligence Service agents spent 2 years inserting coded messages into human media streams to incite panic during the Gliese confrontation. The result? A 3-fold enlistment increase and a flood of what they called message art. It featured crudely drawn images of our High Chancellor with obscene captions. We're still purging it from the galactic net.
The cadets shifted. A few lowered their styluses. Derek Starn raised his hand and rumbled. You break their supply lines. Starve them out. It's a classic, honorable strategy.
The Siege of Cobalt Forge.
Mordo countered, the words a tired litany.
A 5,000-strong human garrison, surrounded by a Hectian battle group of 50,000. You blockaded them for 24 Terran months. They ran out of ammunition in 6 months. They ran out of food in 8. They rerouted the station's atmospheric recyclers, using the high-energy filtration system to generate focused plasma bursts, and turned its hydroponic nutrient gel and to a key component for improvised explosives. When your fleet withdrew from exhaustion, the human commander sent you a bill for damage to the station's plumbing. They endured.
The hall fell silent. Only the holodisplays' hum filled the silence. Styluses stopped scratching on the data screens. Mordo looked across the room again, passing over the frowning aliens, until his stare landed inevitably on the single human.
Well, Cadet Moreno,
Mordo asked.
from this source, enlighten us.
100 cadets turned to stare at him. A knot of pressure formed in Carson's chest. This was the moment he rehearsed in his head for months, ever since the Interstellar Collegium of Conflict Arts accepted him. He was the first, the only one. He took a slow breath, pushed himself to his feet, and raised his hand. Mordo nodded.
Speak.
His heart hammered against his ribs, but he spoke out in a steady voice. You lose? The silence returned, brittle. Cadets exchanged glances. A few blinked. Alia tilted her head a further 3 degrees, her gyro's soft hum faltering for a fraction of a second. Derek Tharn just stared, his massive jaw tightening. Professor Mordo's scarred brow ridges furrowed.
Elaborate, Cadet. Now.
You lose, Carson repeated, projecting his voice across the amphitheater. Any direct confrontation guarantees defeat. Victory for human is about endurance. Humans win by outlasting you. You throw a fleet at them, they break it. You throw an army at them, they grind it to dust. They achieve this by making the cost of fighting them so astronomically high that you quit. He gestured to the stoic hologram. A stray fight, a war of attrition against humans. It's a fool's errand. They'll melt down their family heirlooms to make bullets and use their last breath to curse your name. Only one way beats them. He looked around the room, meeting the other cadets' skeptical and hostile stares. You win them over. You give them a reason to stop fighting. You change the game so that they choose to stop enduring. Derek Starn's harsh laugh cut through the hall. He rose, his hulking frame filling the space between the seats.
Ha! That is a coward's philosophy,
He boomed, vibrating the floor plates.
You speak of victory as a negotiation. We achieve victory through strength, through honor, through the complete defeat of one's enemy.
Alia remained seated. Her sharp reply cut through Derek's rumbling voice. Your assertion is an emotional argument, Cadet Moreno, lacking supporting evidence. Warfare is a system of quantifiable inputs and outputs. Your endurance is merely a variable for pain tolerance. A high variable, admittedly, but one sufficient force can overcome. Professor Mordo watched Carson, a new glint in his old, tired eyes. The dismissal bell chimed. A series of soft, melodic tones. The spell broke. Cadets gathered their things, their whimpers a low hiss. Carson remained standing for a long moment. He came here to build bridges. Instead, on his first day, he'd handed everyone in the room a hammer and pointed a target at his own back. A torrent of diverse bodies and uniforms flooded the corridor outside the lecture hall. Derek Starn and his basalt Aegis cohorts stood like a dam in that torrent. They waited for Carson, arms folded over their massive chests, jaws set like stone.
Moreno.
Derek growled as Carson approached. Up close, the Hectian loomed over him. His thick hide bore the faint, dark mottling of subdermal bone plates, and heat rolled off his dense musculature.
Your little speech insulted me and this collegium's traditions.
Sorry, Carson said, offering a wry smile. I must have missed the memo where tradition became a prerequisite for tactics. One of Derek's companions, another broad-shouldered Hectian, stepped forward.
You think this is a joke?
I think taking tactical advice from a species that once lost the war against the large flightless birds, that is a bad idea.
Carson replied, a glint in his eye. But hey, you do you. He referenced a minor footnote in Hectian history he read on a trip here. A low blow, but he was already in a hole. Might as well dig. Derek's expression hardened.
You believe that you're clever, human. Strength wins in the Centurion Crucible. Cleverness is for the weak. The Basalt Aegis will show you real strength. We will grind you and your little durries into the dust in the hollow cage.
Looking forward to it, Carson said, his smile holding firm. It should be educational. From a distance, Aelia observed the confrontation. She remained still, her smooth, ovoid head unmoving, and Carson heard her internal gyro's low, rhythmic hum, sound like a distant engine. She scanned him, dissecting his posture, his tone, his word choice. She posed a different threat from Derek's. Derek's wanted to beat him. Aelia wanted to solve him. Carson gave Derek's a final, infuriatingly casual nod and walked away, leaving the Hectian grinding his teeth, his hands balled into fists. The hollow cage formed the Collegium's heart, a vast, cavernous sphere. Its inner walls formed a fractal grid of emitters. The air hummed with a low thrum from a million hidden projectors. For the Centurion Crucible's first exercise, a team elimination match, the Collegium's administrative AI assigned Carson to an independent squad of cadets whose scores placed them outside the standard team assignments. His teammates were Pavo, a Chirin technician who could bypass a military-grade firewall in seconds but often tangled his own 2 long, digitigrade legs in a firefight, and Vorn, a hulking Ordalian. Vorn's species communicated through subsonic frequencies, making his verbal responses slow and deliberate as he translated thoughts into audible sound. "So," Carson said, checking the charge on his simulator rifle. It fired cohesive light packets, marking a target's armor with a glowing tag on the Collegium's network. "Our plan: survive the opening volley. Any thoughts on achieving that objective?" Pavo's optic sensors whirred, focusing on multiple points in the simulated jungle at once.
The Aegis always opens with a saturation strike. From this position, lasting 30 seconds would be lucky.
"I like those odds," Carson muttered. Vorn grunted, a landslide in his chest.
We hit them hard.
"A solid plan, Vorn," Carson said. "Let's file it under Plan B. Plan A, make them regret meeting us, huh?" The starting horn blared. Seconds later, a volley of searing red light tore through the holographic foliage where they stood moments before. The Basalt Aegis moved in perfect concert, their fire patterns overlapping to saturate the area. They were a battering ram, and every other team was a gate they would break. "Okay, Plan C!" Carson yelled, already moving. "Run!" He vaulted over a fallen log, slid under a thick holographic root, and sprang sideways off a massive Kaikad's trunk, his body twisting in midair. Pathways opened where others saw obstacles. A habit he'd formed from his years at parkour on his crowded home city's spires. For him, the jungle was a playground. Vorn crashed through the undergrowth like a runaway freighter. Pavo scrambled through vines. They followed Carson's lead, retreating deeper into the tense terrain.
Moreno, this is a rout. We've lost all tactical cohesion.
Pavo chirped as another volley of light sizzled past his head.
A road is just a retreat with style.
Carson shot back. He skidded to a halt behind a rock outcropping and pointed. "Pavo, the stream over there. Is the floor solid?"
The emitters project a solid surface, but the simulation rates the substrate for low-mass entities only. A Hectian would likely fall through due to the maintenance channel below.
"Perfect," Carson grinned. He grabbed thick, fibrous vines. "Start tying." Carson led the Basalt Aegis on a wild chase, using his agility to set simple, frustrating traps. a vine tripwire triggering a shower of holographic pollen, clouding their vision. A false trail leading to the unstable stream bed, where two of Derek's teammates plunged waist-deep into viscous mud that sucked them down, their boots sliding uselessly, marking them as immobilized and out of reach. Pavo fell first. The sniper picked him off while he bypassed a system console to create a holographic flash flood. They cornered Vorn, but he went down fighting, taking one more Aegis member with him before a final volley coated him head to toe in shimmering light. That left Carson alone against Derek's and his three remaining squad mates. He focused on evading them, just running. He became a flicker in the jungle's periphery, a taunt on the comms. He led them in circles, forcing them to burn through their energy reserves. They slowed, their powerful strides shortening, their movements growing heavier. Their explosive strength came at a cost. The final buzzer sounded. The jungle's simulated noise died. Carson leaned against a holographic tree, chest heaving. The results flashed into their heads-up displays. The Basalt Aegis had the most eliminations, earning them a respectable point total. Failing to eliminate Carson cost them the full victory bonus. His own score showed a string of zeros, but next to his name, one statistic glowed. Survival time, 30 minutes. The longest of any cadet in the opening round. From across the clearing, a roar of frustration echoed. Derek's Thorn slammed his fist against a tree. The holographic bark flickered, and the massive Hectian shook his hand, his body shuddering with the impact. Carson allowed himself a small, weary smile. He made Derek's look like a fool, a greater blow than any simulated kill in the Collegium's rigid, honor-bound world. Dean Caldron's office stood as a monument to sterile order. Every data screen sat aligned to the millimeter. Filters purified the still, thin air to a sterile perfection. Caldron himself was a Cerulean, a tall, slender avian who resembled a meticulously dressed owl. His fine gray plumage was immaculate, and he blinked his large golden eyes shielded by a series of transparent nictitating membranes. In a slow, complex sequence as he reviewed the data from Carson's match. "Cadet Moreno," he said in a dry monotone. "Your performance in the preliminary crucible exercise was an outlier." "I'll take that as a compliment, sir," Carson said, standing at ease in the room's center. "An observation." Caldron blinked, a slow three-part sequence. "The holocage provides us valuable combat data. The Allied High Command wants to know how soldiers break and which tactics work. Your evasions yielded chaotic, unusable combat telemetry." "I survived, Dean. My objective was survival." "Your objective was to engage," Caldron corrected him, "to provide a useful result. High Command wants a manual for fighting humans. That means we need to push the simulators hard. We require decisive engagements, clear wins and losses. We must have usable results, Cadet. Something more than games of tag." The Dean leaned forward, fixing his golden eyes on Carson. His tone lost its academic softness, replaced by something colder, sharper. "Your presence here represents a significant investment for the allied species. Your exchange program slot is conditional on you being useful to us. Disruption becomes useful only if we can measure and teach it. So if you persist in these theatrical displays instead of direct engagement, we will reconsider your place here." Carson met his stare, his posture steady. "I understand, Dean." He understood one thing clearly. They wanted him to fight like them so they could learn how to beat people who fought like him. The circular logic made him dizzy. He came here to teach them something else entirely, but his first student would be the Dean himself. Returning to his dorm, Carson found the Basalt Aegis' answer to his performance. Foil covered his room. Every surface. The desk, the bed, the walls, even the ceiling. Each piece, perfectly cut and smoothed, formed a shimmering, symmetrical layer. A standard regulation-approved fraternity prank. Cleaning it up would take hours, an annoyance abiding by the student's conduct rules letter. Carson sighed. Its predictability was almost insulting. He pulled out his data screen and sent a message to Pavo.
Hypothetical question. Do you have access to the chemical composition logs for the nutrient dispensers in the fraternity houses?
The reply came back almost instantly.
Hypothetically, yes. Why? Second hypothetical. Could you, hypothetically, suggest a harmless, biologically compatible but fast-acting digestive accelerant that we could synthesize to add to the mixture for house ages?
A pause. A schematic appeared in reply. Pavo found a flaw. The nutrient dispensers in the fraternity houses ran on an ancient civilian network protocol, long unpatched and accessible through a diagnostic port in the laundry services. An unlocked door. A second message followed.
Hypothetically, compound C38B derived from the Grevolian fire fruit would be suitable for the Hectian digestive system. It would reduce the average digestive transit time from 12 hours to approximately 12 minutes, while preserving flavor and nutritional content. Are we still speaking hypothetically? Absolutely.
Carson typed. A grin spreading across his face.
Let's get hypothetical.
The next morning, the grand mess hall buzzed with its usual clatter and chatter. Carson sat with Pavo and Vorn at their now customary isolated table, sipping his own safe broth. The Basalt Aegis members marched in together, as they always did, shoulders back, radiating confidence. They collected their breakfast trays and sat in their grand central table, Derek Starn at its head. They ate. For a few minutes, quiet reigned. Then one Hectian shifted in his seat. Color drained from his face, under his thick hide. A low, urgent rumble started in his gut, a sound audible even across the hall. He stood up abruptly, his expression shifting to sudden gastric panic, and walked, which became a trot, and finally a sprint toward the lavatories. A moment later, a second followed him, then a third. Within a minute, the Basalt Aegis' table stood empty, save for a collection of half-eaten bowls of gruel. The Collegium's most elite cadets laid siege to the fresher stalls in a frantic stampede. The result? A humiliating, disruptive stampede that, being harmless and non-destructive, fell within student conduct rules. Carson caught a glimpse of Alia across the room. She observed the empty Aegis table, tilting her head. Her gyro steady, analytical hum shifted, modulating into a complex, almost melodic pattern of clicks, words. It sounded remarkably like suppressed laughter. Weeks passed. Carson's squad, now nicknamed the Human Wrench, sat near the official leaderboard's bottom. There were also legends in the campus betting pools for their uncanny ability to spoil the favorites. The second crucible exercise was Capture the Flag, set within a zero-gravity habitat designed to simulate a shattered asteroid's debris field. A complex three-dimensional battlefield of spinning rock and treacherous sightlines. Alia's team, known for meticulous planning, and Derrick's, renowned for brute force assaults, were the clear favorites. Carson's squad was, once again, the statistical underdog.
They'll expect us to hide,
Carson said as they drifted into the simulated void near the flagpost.
They'll see us as a nuisance, but that's our advantage. Inaccurate assessment,
Pavo noted, his magnetic boots clamped to a large chunk of iron ore.
Our offensive capabilities are well known below the median.
Good, Carson said.
Because our goal is neither offense nor defense. Our goal is to be a problem.
He pointed to a series of smaller, faster-moving asteroids on Pavo's sensor overlay.
You still have those low-yield explosive foam charges from the last exercise's loadout?
Pavo's optic sensor swiveled.
The loadout for this scenario omits them.
Does the rulebook explicitly forbid them?
It permits them by omission.
Then we're using them.
Alia's plan was a masterpiece of flanking maneuvers, feints, and coordinated fire that would envelop one objective while her primary strike team secured the other. Her plan was flawless. It accounted for every variable except one: an opponent playing an entirely different game. Derek's strategy was simpler. He would fly straight at Carson's flag, blast anyone in his way, and take it. Both of their plans collapsed when the board changed mid-move. Just as Alia's team began their elegant sweeping advance, a small asteroid, nudged from its lazy trajectory by a placed puff of explosive foam, tumbled into their path. It blocked their primary route. Annoying, but correctable. Then, another, larger rock spun into the path of their secondary route. Then a third careened into a larger piece of debris, creating a chain reaction of ricocheting shrapnel that forced his entire squad to take cover. Her plan was in tatters. Derek's team fared a little better. Their direct, brute force approach took them straight into the most chaotic part of the newly arranged debris field. Carson's squad, using their precious few charges, focused entirely on changing the environment, blocking choke points, creating hazards, and turning the orderly simulation into a cosmic game of pinball. Blinded by rage and the chaos, Derek's unit blundered directly into Alia's disorganized team. The two powerhouses, assuming the other was the cause of their problems, opened fire. A furious point-blank firefight erupted in the spinning maze of rock. Both teams, the Collegium's pride, tore each other apart in a spectacular display of misplaced aggression. Cohesive light of every color bloomed in the void. Within minutes, the system marked both Derek's and Alia as eliminated. With their work done, the shattered teams picked off Carson's squad shortly after. The match ended with their flags at their starting positions. Another draw. In the debriefing hall after the match, Alia strode directly up to Carson. A series of sharp, discordant clicks from her metallic limb joints replaced her usual steady hum.
That was tactical vandalism, a pale imitation of strategy,
she stated, her voice tight.
You engineered my defeat because you knew victory was beyond your grasp.
My objective was to spoil Derek's victory bonus, Carson replied calmly, meeting her unseen gaze. My squad was collateral damage. The sharp clicking from her joints, a staccato rhythm of frustration, a new tension tightening her posture. Something beyond anger. She was looking at him as a genuine peer, a rival instead of an anomaly.
Your methods,
she said, the words sharp and cold,
are illogical.
Are they? He countered. Or are they just outside your predictive model? She held his stare for a long moment. They turned with an exacting pivot and walked away, her clicks echoing in the cavernous space. Carson watched her go. He had earned an enemy in the strongest cadet and a rival in the smartest. Things were getting interesting. The mess hall had become a social barometer. The cadets gave Carson's table an even wider berth now. As if his brand of tactical heresy was contagious. He sat with Pavo and Vorn, a small pocket of defiance in a room of conformity.
They're calling you the human wrench,
Pavo said, pushing a data screen across the table to Carson.
It's because you're the wrong tool for every job, and you exist only to jam the gears.
On the screen was a schematic. Pavo had designed a small, discrete device that, if placed on a hollow-cage emitter conduit, could safely overload a localized section of the lighting grid, plunging it into absolute, sensor-proof darkness for a few crucial seconds.
I have also been considering your emphasis on environmental manipulation,
Vorn rumbled, looking up from his bowl of nutrient gel.
I could use my strength to move simulated cover, create new firing positions, Or block them.
Carson looked from Pavo's intricate design to Vorn's earnest, thoughtful expression. Pavo's optic sensors focused on Carson's face. Vorn set his bowl down with a heavy thud. They were co-conspirators now, building on his chaotic philosophy and making it their own. Carson's stomach tightened. This all started as a shield, a way to fend off his own feelings of inadequacy, the sense that he was an imposter. But these two cadets, these outcasts, were counting on him. They had hitched their academic careers to his crazy train. The thought of failing them was a lead weight in his gut. Dean Caldron apparently agreed to the stakes needing to be higher. He called a surprise assembly of all Centurion Crucible participants into the main auditorium. He stood at the podium, a portrait of academic authority, as he scanned the assembled cadets. "There has been an addendum to the scoring parameters for the championship final," he announced, projecting his voice across the hall. The dean's single, slow blink instantly silenced the ensuing murmur. "In addition to objective-based points, a judges panel will now award a significant portion of the final score based on a new metric: strategic efficacy." He paused, letting the deliberately vague term sink in. "Strategic efficacy," he continued, and Carson felt the dean's stare land directly on him. "We will define as the use of tactics we can copy, standardize, and teach. We want fights with clear winners and losers, ones we can analyze. The judges will deduct points for tactics deemed chaotic or disruptive, as these methods yield unteachable models." The cadets murmured and glanced at each other. Many of them looked toward Carson. Caldron was changing the rules to ensure Carson's way of fighting could never win. To succeed now, he would have to abandon his preached philosophy and fight their fight. Professor Mordo, it turned out, had a cruel sense of humor. For the next major simulation, a special paired exercise, he had a new assignment.
The Dean has developed a new training AI.
Mordo growled to the assembled cadets.
He designed it to be logical, efficient, and it learns from its opponent's strategies in real time. Your task is to defeat it.
He looked out at the class, a grim smile on his scarred face.
For this, I'm pairing the class's top tactical student with its top disruptor.
He paired Alia with Carson. The simulation chamber was a smaller, more intimate version of the holocage. Their objective was simple: capture a central beacon defended by the AI's drone forces. "I have formulated a 131-step plan," Alia said immediately. Her two secondary arms, usually folded flush against her torso, unfolding to manipulate a holographic map. One traced tactical routes, while the other cross-referenced energy expenditure. "It accounts for nearly every probable AI response. Your role will be to execute maneuvers as I dictate them." "Great plan," Carson said. "One problem. The most detailed plans are the most brittle, so we need to be fluid, react to what it does." "Reacting wastes energy," she countered. "Anticipation is superior." On their first attempt, the AI anticipated Alia's textbook flanking maneuver and crushed them in a pincer movement. The second attempt went just as badly. Carson improvised, leading a small drone contingent on a wild chase to draw them away from the main force. The AI sacrificed those drones and concentrated its forces on Alia, overwhelming her before Carson could rejoin the fight. They stood in the reset chamber, the simulated nerve shock still tingling in their limbs. "Your logic is too predictable," Carson said. "And your chaos serves no strategic objective," she retorted, the clicks from her limbs growing sharper. "His objective is to break the other guy's strategy."
Enough!
Mordo boomed over the intercom.
One final attempt. Succeed, or you both fail this module.
They entered the simulation for the third time. Aelia, grudgingly, had incorporated a few of Carson's suggestions, adding several contingency branches to her plan. They moved together, a tense cooperation between Aelia's careful positioning and Carson's probing attacks. It almost worked. They pushed the AI back, its drones falling to their combined assault. They were within sight of the beacon, but the AI had learned. It had analyzed Aelia's logic and Carson's diversions. It predicted Aelia's final envelopment tactic and laid a trap, boxing her command drone in. The winning kill shot was seconds away. "It's over," she stated, her voice flat.
The hell it is?
Carson snarled. His drone was meters away, too far to help. Every tactical option led to defeat, so he chose an untactical one. He keyed a command.
Bava would call this percussive maintenance.
His combat unit turned, aimed its main weapon at the floor beneath it, and fired a full-power explosive foam charge. The simulated four plates blew out in a shower of holographic debris. His own unit, its systems screaming warnings, plummeted into a maintenance sublevel below. The system marked it out of bounds, a suicidal move, and it shattered the AI's predictive model. The AI, which had dedicated most of its processing power to countering Carson's anticipated final move, froze for a critical second. Its protocols contained no response for an opponent who voluntarily removed their own piece from the board. Aelia, stunned for only a fraction of that time, reacted instantly. Freed from the AI's trap, she exploited the opening Carson's insane gambit had created. She rerouted her remaining drones, exploiting the AI's momentary confusion, and tore its exposed command structure apart. Victory flashed on their displays. In the silence, Carson spoke over the comm to the drone, still stuck in the floor below.
So, did that have a strategic objective?
A long pause. Then Aelia's voice, quiet and analytical. Your maneuver was unconventional. Another pause. Effective, however. She looked down at a hole in the floor. It would seem an optimal plan requires a contingency for the illogical. From below, he could hear the grin in Carson's words.
See? Your plans hold up once they take a punch.
The day of the championship final arrived, coinciding with the Collegium's annual Festival of Merit. The campus was awash with banners and spectators. High-ranking military observers from every allied species attended, their formal uniforms a stark contrast to the festive atmosphere. The grand leaderboard in the plaza, which had tracked every cadet's progress all semester, was now blank. Today was all that mattered. The scenario was Operation Urban Hope, a disaster response simulation and a test of speed and teamwork. The holocage transformed into a sprawling, ruined city. Teams had to navigate collapsed buildings, unstable overpasses, and treacherous rubble to rescue civilian mannequins and secure valuable medical caches. Dean Caldrone took the stage overlooking the holocage entrance, his gray plumage catching the light. "To see how you would react under real pressure," he announced, his amplified voice booming across the plaza. "I have authorized the simulation safeties to set to level 4 for this final exercise." A murmur of apprehension went through the cadets. The Collegium rarely used level 4. Sim weapon hits this hard could deliver painful electric shock that locked the muscles. Kinetic impacts from falling debris would feel like a riot baton strike. High on the observation deck, Carson saw Professor Morda watching the proceedings. The old Ulgar shook his scarred head and muttered something. Carson's implant-assisted hearing picked it up. A low, wheezing growl.
Pushing the old girl past the red line. It'll cook the emitters.
The starting horn blared. The team surged into the holographic ruins. Derek's basalt Aegis, true to form, opted for a high-risk, high-reward strategy. A high-value medical cache sat on the top floor of a central skyscraper, just before a scheduled security lockdown sealed the area in 90 seconds. Their plan was to get in, grab the cache, and get out before the blast doors slammed shut. A thread-the-needle maneuver that, if worked, would give them an insurmountable lead. Carson watched them go, his own team moving through the periphery.
Let the big dogs fight over the bomb, he told Pavo and Vorn. We'll scavenge the scraps.
From his vantage point, the Aegis entered the tower. The countdown timer on his HUD ticked down. 10, 9, 8. The scheduled lockdown protocol initiated. Sirens blared. Across the city, massive holographic blast doors energized. Something else happened. The strain of the massive urban environment combined with the increased energy drain of the level 4 safeties was too much. The holographic emitters, pushed to their thermal limits, began to fail. A low hum became a high-pitched scream. Instead of projecting harmless spectral light to simulate falling debris, the overloaded emitters flashed forward sections of the projectile rubble into solid, heavy hard-light constructs. The planned gentle lockdown became a violent, catastrophic implosion of real, crushing weight. The tower shattered. Tons of solidified concrete and steel rained down, catching the basalt Aegis directly underneath. Derek's last transmission was a single, raw scream, cut off by the static. The simulation continued. The calm, automated announcer said, "Basalt Aegis Squad designated combat ineffective." The judges, seeing only the data on their screens, assumed the scripted event caught them. They instructed the remaining teams to proceed with the mission. The game went on, but Carson stood frozen, watching the enormous cloud of holographic dust settle. Something was wrong. His years of parkour gave him an intuitive understanding of physics, of bodies and motion, how things fall, break. One piece of shimmering rubble pinned an Aegis cadet. The cadet's leg was bent at a hard angle, one that would shatter armored plates in any reality. And the way they thrashed with a frantic desperation, a movement unlike the controlled spasm of a level 4 pain stimulus. Trapped. Hurt. Rescuing them would earn 0 points. It would be an automatic forfeit of the Centurion Crucible and the Strategos trophy. It would mean failing the one test Dean Caldron had explicitly commanded him to pass. He looked at Pavo and Vorn. He looked at the scoreboard, still pristine and empty. He thought of his thesis, the one he'd declared on the first day. You win them over. He keyed his microphone, switching it from his squad's to the universal emergency frequency, broadcasting to every cadet in the arena. Alia's team executed a search pattern in the city's industrial sector when Carson cut through her private comms, overriding her tactical channel.
Morena to all teams. Abort the mission. The tower collapsed in the basalt Aegis. I repeat, the collapse was real. This is now a recovery operation.
He spoke calmly, with an authority that seized her attention. He explained his observations, the unnatural angle of the debris, the desperate movements of the trapped cadet, the complete radio silence. A message from the judges flashed on Alia's HUD. Cadet Moreno, cease unauthorized transmissions. Your assessment is incorrect. Return to the mission parameters. Then Carson spoke again, his tone ringing with conviction.
Forget the points. Forget the trophy. Cadets are trapped in there. They need our help. So my team's going in. Who's with us?
Alia stood motionless, processing the conflicting data streams. Her training dictated she follow the judge's orders. Her analysis dictated that Moreno's assessment was unreliable, prone to emotional, irrational acts. But her experience brought her back to the AI simulation. Her plan, accounting for every variable she could predict, had led her into a fatal trap. Carson's illogical, unpredictable act of self-removal had saved them. He approached the game board differently. He spotted the flaws in the system that everyone else took for granted. She accessed her suit's long-range energy sensors and directed them at the collapse site. The judges saw game data. She read the energy readings, the raw ones. Anomalous signatures. Wild fluctuations consistent with catastrophic emitter failure. Moreno was right. She keyed her own comms to the universal channel.
Aelia, to all teams,
She said, her voice crisp and clear.
my scans confirm anomalous power signatures at the tower. Moreno's assessment is correct. The mission has changed.
She looked at her own squad mates.
We're going in.
One by one, the icons in the tactical map changed course. A squad of Skylian skirmishers abandoned their objective at the medical center. A team of lumbering Ordalians turned from their sweep of the subway tunnels. The Centurion Crucible, the pinnacle of individual and team achievement, dissolved into something new. A massive, impromptu rescue force converged on the tower's ruins. The scene was frantic, but a structure emerged from the bedlam. Aelia, arriving at the site, found a functioning terminal amidst the debris. She plugged herself in, her secondary arms a blur across the interface. She took command, and she issued clear, direct orders over the universal channel.
Squad Gamma, your demolition kits. I need you to stabilize the western wall. Squad Delta, form a perimeter. Keep everyone else away from the primary collapse until we have it secured.
While Aelia directed the larger effort, Carson was already deep in the wreckage, his agile body slipping through gaps too small for a Hectian or an Odalian.
Born, I need you in here. Ease this girder up, just a few centimeters.
He yelled.
Pavo, give me a scan. Tell me the structural weak point in this slab right here.
They used their simulation equipment for entirely new purposes. Explosive foam charges, meant to immobilize enemies, braced unstable rubble. Grappling hooks, meant for traversal, pulled debris clear. They worked together, a dozen species, a dozen different teams, all with a single purpose. They moved as a coalition. They found Derek's pinned under a massive hard light beam. A massive hard light beam crushing his leg. Another of his teammates was insensate nearby, her armor cracked. With Vorn's immense strength, Pavo's technical guidance, and the coordinated effort of 3 other squads, they lifted the beam. Carson helped pull the massive Hectian free. Derek's, groaning in real pain, looked up at him. His expression was quiet, still. The look of a man pulled back from his own end by the person he despised most. The hollow cage's flashing red emergency lights cast long shadows on the silent arena. Dean Caldron, horror etched on his features, terminated the exercise. Real medical teams rushed in, their voices sharp and urgent in the sudden quiet. The live broadcast, streamed to the entire Allied command, captured the entire incident, from Caldron's speech to the chaotic rescue. The judges, their faces drained of color, officially scored every team that participated in the rescue with 0 points. The Strategos trophy, by default, went to the only squad that had held back. A team of Cerulean snipers too far away to respond in time. Their captain, a slender avian like the Dean, walked to the podium. He picked up the gleaming trophy, held it for a moment, and then placed it back on the pedestal. He gave Carson a single brief nod and walked away, his squad following him. The prize sat on his pedestal, unclaimed. The hollow cage fell quiet, leaving only the low hum of the emergency systems. With his legs stabilized by the medics, Derek limped over to Carson, leaning heavily on one of his teammates. He stopped in front of the human. He looked Carson in the eye.
They said the beam crushed my leg. The medics say that I'll walk again, but my career as a line officer is over.
He took a ragged breath.
You saved my life. Thank you.
He swallowed, the motion difficult.
You were right about everything. Your methods are that they're beyond me.
Carson just nodded, letting the moment's weight settle. Aelia joined them, her metallic form moving silently through the cavernous space. She looked at the blank scoreboard, then at the abandoned trophy. "It seems like we all lost," she said, her tone analytical, yet with a new depth. Carson looked from her to Derek's, to the other cadets now milling around, checking on each other. He grinned, a tired, genuine expression. "Or maybe," he said, "we all won?" Alia considered this. The faint clicks and hums of her internal mechanisms, a constant companion to her presence, quieted completely, leaving her in an uncharacteristic, profound stillness. Dean Caldron's office was in disarray. Data screens lay strewn across his desk. His fine gray plumage was disheveled. He looked smaller, slumped in his chair. Carson braced for expulsion, for a lecture, court-martial, a one-way trip back to Earth in disgrace. He was surprised to see Alia and a recovered Derek's, using a grav crutch to support his leg, already waiting for him in the office. "Cadet Moreno," Caldron began, his voice lacking its pedantic edge, sounding only tired. "The incident in the hollow cage was a catastrophic failure of my protocols, my pursuit of data. It endangered you all. I have already tendered my resignation to the Board of Governors." Carson blinked. This was far from how he imagined this going. "The board refused it," Caldron continued with a sigh. "Apparently, the Allied High Command was impressed." He tapped the data screen, and a new set of metrics filled the air between them. "The rescue operation you initiated was more effective and projected far fewer casualties than our standard protocols. The observers are calling it a breakthrough. High Command wants it replicated." He looked up, fixing his golden eyes on Carson, and for the first time, Carson saw desperation in them. "As of today, we are permanently removing anti-hominid tactics from the curriculum," the dean said. "In its place, High Command has authorized the creation of an exploratory seminar for next term. Unconventional Coalition Doctrine. Professor Mordo will oversee it. As its primary case study and student advisor, your first task is to help write the report that will become its curriculum." Carson stood, stunned into silence. He looked at Derek's and gave him a slow, deliberate nod of respect. Then he looked at Alia. She tilted her head, and her gyro's soft, rhythmic hum returned. A calm, steady sound. She gave him the slightest of nods, an almost imperceptible motion. That was his answer. "I accept," Carson said. As they left the office, walking side by side down the long, quiet corridor, Alia lightly touched his arm with one of her secondary hands. The cool, smooth ceramic sent a jolt through his sleeve. "Your theory about engaging humans through alternative means," she said, her voice a low, analytical murmur. "It may require further, more hands-on study." He looked at her, the smooth faceplate he was somehow beginning to read as easily as any human expression, and he smiled. "I'm counting on it, Princess." Together, they walked out into the plaza's light, matching each other's steady pace. They had a curriculum to design.